Hello and welcome to Enlightened Empaths, your community for the spiritually awakened, where we discuss, explore, and connect with fellow empaths, healers, intuitives, and seekers. Hello, empaths. So as we are continuing with our spooky season, we are going to be jumping into something a little bit spookier than we touched upon last week. Today's episode is all about haunted objects. Do you love to go to thrift stores? Have you ever bought something from a garage sale or Facebook Marketplace? If so, you may have brought home a ghost. We're going to be looking at signs you might have brought something in your home, and then we'll discuss some of the creepier stories we've come across about haunted dolls, scary clowns, and more. A lot of our information and stories come from a book called Haunted by the Things You Love, written by John Zaffis and Rosemary Ellen Guiley, which features stories of possessed possessions. And in that book, Guiley says that sometimes objects that have spirit attachments are dormant until they are acquired by the right person whose activities, energy field, or home energy provide the ideal ingredients or activation. That sounds scary, doesn't it?
It sounds very scary, yes.
Okay, so how do you know if you might have brought something home? Well, your animals might bark or meow at nothing. Your sleep might be interrupted by unexplained awakenings. You might have that sensation that someone's always watching you. Maybe the people in your house are arguing more than usual. You might feel kind of afraid in certain areas of your home for some reason. Or maybe you're seeing things out of the corner of your eye. Sometimes you might hear people whispering, but you can't actually hear any words. Maybe lights in your house turn on and off. Items might disappear and then reappear, often in the exact location you just searched. You might see unexplained shadows. Doors or cabinets could open or close on their own. Or there could be cold or hot spots in certain areas of your home. Unexplained smells, perfumes, cigarettes, pipes. Or feeling as though someone or something is brushing your skin or lightly touching you. Now, some of these mean life. Right? We all forget our keys and then we just find them. Or a light bulb's going on the fritz and so the light flicks on and off. Or we're thinking about our grandmother and suddenly we smell her, joy perfume. But we're talking about all of these together. Would you agree with that?
I would. And it's not, it feels different. And I've had all of these things happen.
Yeah.
And not just as a medium, but just as a person that was had the bejesus scared out of me being in different places. So, I mean, people think because we do this work and we talk to dead people and we're in the zone that this stuff doesn't shake us too. Well, just sharing, it does.
Oh, no, it does. It does.
And I think sometimes people will think about inanimate objects having a spiritual essence or a life force. That's as old as human history. And ghosts are known to either haunt specific locations or people or objects that they were associated with during their lives. And in ancient cultures, they were universally regarded the spirit of a deceased person that stayed in the material world as unnatural. And so many developed rituals to prevent or manage these hauntings. And I mean, we've talked about this over the years of different places geographically or different homes, or you mentioned the Stanley Museum in the last, was it the Stanley Museum? No.
Yeah.
The hotel.
The Stanley house. Yeah.
Yeah. And you've been there, right?
Yeah.
But you didn't feel woo-woo.
I didn't. I do think that there are spirits there, but not ghosts, if that makes sense.
Makes perfect sense.
Okay. I think ghosts are a whole different thing. I have seen a ghost. I have encountered a ghost a couple of times when I was working with the paranormal team years ago. Their energy is weird and sporadic and stuck and strange. But I think certain homes or maybe even objects that were well loved, I think spirits might visit back and forth to just check on it. That's what I felt at the Stanley.
Okay, very cool.
It didn't feel scary to me.
No, there's a difference between, well, for me, there's a difference between picking something up and feeling an energy and feeling a sense of peace or love, or that it was very enjoyed or that it was treasured versus, ooh, I don't want to touch that, put it down.
Yes, exactly. And I think this idea of haunted, we often get it confused. Like I was saying, you might smell perfume, but it could just be your grandmother popping in to say hello. So I do think it's important to distinguish the difference between a spirit visiting and something spooky happening in your home.
Yes.
And I think you can feel it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So this idea of haunted objects goes back forever. As early as the 10th century, the Japanese had a folklore story it's called Suko Megami, and it says that any ordinary household items, including dolls, were believed to be granted a soul after 100 years of service. Isn't that interesting?
Oh, it is.
Makes you think about like the Velveteen Rabbit. I don't know. But the narrative surrounding these objects was nuanced. While they were prone to tricking people, they were also spiteful or sometimes even murderous if they felt neglected by their owners after serving for too long. And then a Buddhist priest would be brought in for help. The indigenous people of North America, such as the Hopi and Zuni, they also have a tradition of imbuing figures with spiritual significance. The Kachina dolls are not designed as playthings, but as sacred prayer objects that serve as representations of benevolent spirits called katsinam. And these dolls were intentionally carved to draw in a specific spirit, as the spirit is attracted to an image of itself. And so these were used to attract favorable weather or abundance or wellness. In Central Africa, the Congo people created wooden figures that were intentionally designed as spiritual vessels. These spirit hunters, as they were called, were created by sculptors and then given to a spiritual specialist who would empower the figure by placing medicinal or magical herbs, glass, nails, and other materials into its cavities. And the goal was to invite a spirit into the vessel for protection, healing, or to punish wrongdoing. So
And
we just want to point out that not all dolls are haunted or malevolent. Some have a more positive connection.
but there was a Japanese legend from 1918 that a teenager brought a doll for his younger sister, and she named the doll after herself. And after her death, her family noticed that the doll's hair was growing, leading them to believe that the girl's spirit had entered the doll. And the story presents a clear instance of an emotional attachment to an object leading to a spiritual connection. And unlike many modern haunted doll stories, the doll was not seen as a source of terror, but as a cherished living memorial to the deceased child. It was given to a temple where a priest regularly trims its hair, acknowledging its existence without fear. I'm sorry, if my doll starts growing hair,
No.
I'm not just going to give it a haircut.
Maybe a highlight. Oh my gosh, she named the doll after herself. All right, that I just have a thought. My mom, do you remember Cabbage Patch dolls?
Yes.
Okay, I wanted one so badly one Christmas. I think I was like 8 years old. And if for all of our young listeners, Cabbage Patch dolls were a phenomenon back in the 80s. And they came with a birth certificate. I thought that was like the coolest thing. And so you'd fill in the information and mail it back, and then you'd get an official birth certificate for your doll. Well, when Santa brought me my Cabbage Patch doll, her birth certificate had already been sent and come back to me, and it was named after my mother, Carol. And I just gave that doll to Goodwill when I was moving out of my house. Sorry, Mom. Maybe it was imbued with her spirit. I didn't think about that.
Oh, someone was over the moon at finding that doll at Goodwill. Carol, that's just, I love that.
Carol with an E.
Mhm.
All right, so that's a lot of background. Let's get into some spooky stories. I think the most famous haunted doll we could ever talk about is Annabelle. Would you agree?
Yes.
I mean, she was just recently in the news in a very, very tragic way. But the legend, as told by paranormal investigators Ed and Lorraine Warren, began in the 1970s when a 28-year-old student nurse received a Raggedy Ann doll as a gift. and the nurse claimed the doll would move on its own and exhibit malicious behavior. A psychic medium told her the doll was inhabited by the spirit of a deceased 6-year-old girl named Annabelle, a spirit that the nurse initially sympathized with and doted upon. The Warrens later concluded that the doll was not possessed by a girl spirit, but was being manipulated by a demonic entity that had been released by the psychic seance. So the Warren story, which has been featured in books and documentaries and eventually became, part of the Conjuring series and was licensed to Hollywood, the original Raggedy Ann doll was transformed into a terrifying porcelain doll that is disfigured and super, super menacing. I just saw the most recent Conjuring film in the movie theater a couple of weekends ago. It was creepy, a little silly, and Annabelle does make an appearance. But anyway, that's Annabelle, and she is still creating a lot of horror. Would you agree? I mean, so many people, she just went on tour, and we know that poor paranormal investigator who was on tour with her mysteriously died. But a lot of people started posting all over social media that weird stuff happened in the town that she was visiting as well.
Surprisingly, I know nothing about this or the latest Conjuring movie.
Really?
Oh no, I don't look for this stuff. Nope.
Wow. Okay, so Matt Rife is a stand-up comedian who went viral on TikTok and now has Netflix specials and a lot of money. And so he and his friend have always been fascinated by the Warrens, and they just bought their paranormal museum.
Oh.
And I'm nervous because one of the things the Warrens did is they would have a priest come every month to re-bless and seal the haunted objects in their museum. I just can't picture the young cutie pie we know as Matt Rife doing that. I don't know.
Okay.
So,
where is this located?
Connecticut.
I just wanted to make sure I don't go in that direction.
Yeah, right in Monroe, Connecticut. But of course, we also have the haunted doll, Robert. Do you want to tell us about Robert?
Sure. And this started way back in 1904, and the doll was a handmade 40-inch tall figure that was given to a young boy named Robert Eugene Otto. The doll was reportedly a gift from a Bahamian maid, with some local lore suggesting it was given as a form of retaliation and cursed with voodoo. And as a child, Otto became inseparable from the doll, which he named Robert. And he would often blame the doll for any misbehavior, or perhaps by saying, "I didn't do it, Robert did it." And as Otto grew, the strange incidents continued, people claiming to see the doll move from one side of the window to the other. Its expression would change, and giggling would be heard in the room where it was kept. After Otto's death, the house was sold, and new tenants reported hearing footsteps in the attic and witnessing the doll move on its own. Robert is now on display at the East Martello Museum in Key West, Florida, where the legend continues. The doll's notoriety has led to a ritualistic interaction with visitors who are warned to ask Robert for permission before taking a photo to avoid being cursed. The museum receives a constant stream of apology letters from individuals who believe they were afflicted with misfortune after disrespecting the doll. This demonstrates a curious phenomenon. The cursed item is a scapegoat for unexplainable tragedy. Blaming the doll for a string of bad luck provides a tangible explanation for an otherwise chaotic and painful reality. It's often easier to confront a malevolent object than to accept the randomness of life.
Or Robert is just malicious and creepy and vengeful.
And there is something to black magic. There is something to dark magic. And I don't go in that direction, obviously, because it scares me, and I have enough things in the world to think about without thinking about scary stuff like that. Well, we've talked about this a lot, too. Be careful what doors you open. And I think sometimes people will invite things in thinking it's funny or a lark or whatever, and it's not.
No, it's not. I don't even know if it's black magic or if it's just the power of our own minds. I really believe the world is our echo. And if you put negativity out there, you're going to put negativity out there, but it's going to come back to you threefold.
Well, it's
Same
the
with
same.
positive.
Yes. Or if having a lucky shirt or carrying a certain stone, or I always have this coin. There was a woman I knew years and years and years ago, and I think we worked at a camp in upstate New York together, and she had traveled with the carnival when she was younger. She'd been in foster care. She had run away from one of the foster homes, and she had traveled with a carnival. And she carried this pin, like this little pin, and we were working at this camp. She was really a sweetheart. And she couldn't find the pin, and she completely started to. She says, "I have to have that pin. I was given that pin, and it's kept me safe all these years." So I think sometimes we'll hold on to an object that it's going to protect us, or it's going to give us solace, or it's going to give us. And there's maybe human psyche, we need that sometimes.
Yeah. And I say, if you need it, have at it. Put your pin on, But I don't think it's the pin that was keeping her safe. I think it's her belief that the pin was keeping her safe that kept her safe.
Yes.
Yeah, and I think that's important. However, I listened to a morning radio show podcast, really funny, Bob and Sherry. And a couple of years ago, during spooky season, they had people call in with spooky stories. And this one woman said that her husband had done her so wrong and had cheated on her and left her and the kids and was with this new woman, and she was mad. So, as one does, she went on Amazon and bought a voodoo doll.
Oh.
And she thought it was just funny and like an outlet for her anger, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so she just like jammed a pin in the thigh of this voodoo doll off Amazon. And a couple of days later, her ex-husband broke his leg.
Did he break his femur in the thigh?
I don't know. She just said he broke his leg.
Oh.
But it just made me think, because she wasn't like doing it ritualistically or putting it out. I don't know. I just never forgot that story. It creeped me out.
I don't think we need to mess with some things.
No, we definitely don't. We have to. But how can we do a spooky haunted show without mentioning creepy clown dolls?
That's true. You have to include the creepy clowns.
They're so scary. We'll start with the story of Sarah, an avid collector of clown dolls, who acquired 2 of these clown dolls from an antique store. Now, this story comes from that book we mentioned earlier, Haunted by the Objects You Love. Soon after, she started having nightmares where she was running from dark, unknown people who would suddenly morph into monsters with clown faces. Often, she'd wake up from the dream and find that the 2 clown dolls had moved from the place where she left them in her doll room. John Zaffis said when he met Sarah and held one of her dolls, he saw a shadow figure dart across the room. Sarah shared that after she brought the dolls home, the atmosphere in the house changed. She said it didn't feel as friendly or bright, and there were cold spots. Lights were often left on when she knew she'd turned them off. She'd hear rustling sounds and tapping on the walls. John Zaffis told her to place the dolls in storage in the garage. She did, and all activity in the home stopped, including the nightmares. So Zaffis took the creepy clown dolls home, where he blessed them with salt and holy water. He then said prayers over them and put them out in the sun for several days and repeated the process, and they now reside in his haunted museum of the paranormal. But he also talked about how he went to that antique store and found out that it was a collection of, I think, 5 or 6 dolls. And he was able to track down some of the other women who had bought the other dolls, and they also had those experiences. I think one of the women returned the dolls, and another one just gave them away.
Yeah. No, I don't think that just splashing a little holy water and salt is the answer.
But again, if John Zaffis believes that's going to clear it,
it's true, very true.
It will.
Yeah, that's but I have had that feeling when you take something out of your home and suddenly the energy changes, or if you've been gifted something, and I've shared this before. Used to love antiques and junk stores and thrift stores and all that stuff, and now I'm just more cautious about what I bring in. And if it doesn't feel right, no matter how much I like it, it doesn't come home.
Yeah. I'm cautious about going into those stores, never mind bringing something home.
Yeah. And like your crystal that you work with all these years, that is going to hold a piece of your energy.
Yeah, for sure.
And of course, someone would pick it up and say, "Oh my God, I love this. This is such good juju." But equally, that can be if someone has had a miserable existence and they have their items. But mirrors. Mirrors have this unique and a fear placed in paranormal folklore too, because they have a long-standing reputation as potential portals connecting the worlds of the living and the dead. And scrying or mirror work, that goes way, way back with paranormal and mediumship. A famous example from wider paranormal lore is the Myrtle's Plantation mirror, which is said to contain the trapped spirits of a poisoned family. Oh, geez. The mirrors, the mirror serves as a gateway, and the haunting could be of a more malevolent or destructive nature, as it's tied to an item that is often used in ritualistic and occult practices. Keep in mind that mirrors should not be placed facing each other. You should also not have your mirror face you across the bed.
Yeah. Have you ever heard that one? When you wake up, you shouldn't look at yourself in the mirror.
What is the meaning? Why? I mean, I don't.
It's just a no-no in feng shui because it's supposed to just create bad energy. I don't know why.
Okay.
But I understand the idea of mirrors facing each other, that could create something. I don't know. The Myrtle's Plantation story is fascinating because there's a very long and involved story of a house slave who was really upset because the owner of the Myrtle's Plantation had taken advantage of her. And a lot of it's very involved. I don't want to go into but it's a very involved story. And she was really upset and angry. And she wanted to make the family sick with oleander leaves so that she could nurse them back to health and get back into the good graces.
Okay.
And she put too much oleander and the family was poisoned and died. And everyone has seen her walking around this plantation. I mean, you can just, right now, while you're listening, just Google Myrtle's Plantation, and you'll see some of the ghostly images that have been taken of her by, tourists, people visiting. These aren't hoaxes. And yet there is no recorded documentation of that family dying from poison or of a slave being on those premises by that name. And so a lot of people will use this story as an example of a tulpa, meaning when you tell a story over and over and over again and give it breath and life and a narrative, that it almost comes into being.
Oh, it's similar to a pathological liar telling the same story and then believing it as their reality.
Yes, I guess so. But the tulpa theory is like it actually creates a being that has that energy.
I've read about that in the past, and you can. It's not the best use of manifestation, but you can bring an entity to being, and you wonder, because for the practical minded, when we say, "Oh, I'm working with my guide and this is his name and this is what he looks like," the more we put into the energy into that, and I do believe there are guides and angelic presence and ancestors that are here to help us, but the more you get to build a relationship with them, you start to develop idiosyncrasies and personify them more.
Yeah. Yeah, because the mind is a magical thing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, back to our creepy stories. We also have the Let Me Out doll. This story takes place in Australia. Kerry Walton and his brother decided to explore an abandoned home one day that was rumored to be haunted. And when he first peered into the floorboards, he thought he had found the remains of a deceased little boy, but upon closer inspection saw that it was a creepy-looking doll. It has a menacing, frowning face, but otherwise looked like a fairly normal doll. Kerry and his brother decided to take the doll home with them. On their drive back to Brisbane, they swore it sounded as if the doll was trying to get out of the bag they'd put it in, so they nicknamed him Let Me Out. Walton claims several other people have seen the doll move on its own. Others have negative reactions to the doll, either feeling faint or sick or just really sad. Dogs would act nervous around the doll or bark at it. People have seen small doll-like scuff marks on the floorboards of the Walton home. One time he tried to sell the doll, and as he was on his way to deliver the doll to its new owner, he says he was pinned inside his car by a large, invisible, powerful entity. When Carrie Walton had scientists look at the doll, they determined from nails in the doll's shoes that it was 200 years old. It had human hair, glass eyes, and, check this out, a replica of a human brain inside its head. Mediums and psychics who've held the doll say it contains the spirit of a boy or a young man who was drowned. Why would you create a doll with human hair and a replica of a brain?
Well, and why would you have one with a menacing, frowning little face?
I know. Talk about dark magic.
Ooh, 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 ooh. But just 200 years old and human hair. And someone would say, of course, they used hair when they did dolls back then, or they did this, or they did that. But see, the one that jumped out on me at this was the dogs would act nervous around the doll and would bark at it because they see shit we don't see.
Exactly. They have a different range. I learned this when I was researching about the color blue, as I mentioned on last week's show.
Okay.
Dogs can't see, they see the rainbow differently than we do.
Yeah.
I think it's yellows and oranges they can't see. There's two hues in the rainbow that they cannot see, but they can see beyond our spectrum. And there's certain birds who can see above and below the spectrum that we can see. It's fascinating.
It really is. I love that stuff. And isn't it interesting that in most of these stories, the haunted doll came about almost by accident? But not all the hauntings are accidental, because some of the results are a result of conscious human intent. And so objects can be imbued with a malevolent force through a curse or through their use in an occult ritual. And this could have occurred in the case of Robert the doll, but there's also the chilling tale of Joliet the doll, which centers on a family curse that has allegedly afflicted 4 generations, causing every male infant born into a family to die within 3 days of life. Oh, that's horrible. The doll is believed to be a vessel for the spirits of the lost boys whose cries and giggles are heard at night. Legend has it that it began when a woman received the doll as a pregnancy gift from a friend. The friend and the woman had a bitter relationship for some unknown reason, and it's believed that she placed a curse on the doll out of jealousy. At night, the doll is said to give out the piercing cries of different babies, all male, sometimes singly, sometimes all at the same time. Oh, well, hell no.
No.
That doll needs to go.
I know.
And, and I've done a lot of working with the groups in the ancestral healing class, and you'll see patterns in family of origins where, there were 3 boys and a girl, and then there'll be a generation where all of a sudden the pattern stops. And you wonder, did the pattern stop because they, as the man we interviewed many, many months ago, they've healed the ancestral lineage? Or is it that someone said, oh no, we're just not continuing this? But I think that that's a brutally sad story and scary.
Too. And I think the most recent article was by the woman who is a descendant of this family and still has this doll, and unfortunately did lose a male son. And I think she has 1 or 2 daughters now. And she won't do anything with, she feels like it's their burden to carry. Like she's afraid to give it to a museum or that someone else would take this on, which makes me sad too.
Yeah, but there must be a way that you could. So if we wanted to go in a religious direction, a priest could release whatever that is, and it could go off into another place. It doesn't have to stay here.
Right.
That energy.
I agree. It could, or transformed or binded. I know.
Or there's ways. That almost seems masochistic to keep it in the family.
I know. It's troubling.
But somebody is going to step up and say, don't you give me that damn doll.
I know. All right, this next one isn't a haunted doll, but a haunted box called the Dibbuk box. And this story is also included in the book Haunted by the Objects You Love. Now, the word Dibbuk comes from Jewish folklore and is said to be the discarnate evil spirit of a mean, angry person. It's derived from a Hebrew word meaning the act of sticking or to adhere to or cling. It was believed that spirits of people who weren't laid to rest would become either demons or vengeful spirits. If a Dibbuk entered a person, it was considered a sign that the possessed individual committed a secret sin, leading to years of mistreatment of the mentally ill, who were often thought to be possessed and not suffering from a mental illness. Specially trained members of the Jewish faith would perform detailed rituals to exorcise the Dibbuk from the afflicted person, sending the malignant spirit to hell and performing a restoration or transmigration to the afflicted person. This exorcism was usually performed in a synagogue with at least 10 adult witnesses. First, he would interview the Dibbuk and try to find out why he or she was a wandering spirit, and then he tried to get the name because it's believed this gives one authority over the spirit. Adjurations were then recited, commanding the spirit to leave and fill an empty flask, which would then be sealed. Okay, so that's the background. Let's get into the scary story known as the Dibbuk box, which is actually an old wine cabinet a granddaughter was selling at an estate sale. She told a man named Kevin Mannis that it belonged to her grandmother who had survived the Holocaust. She told Mannis it contained a Dibbuk and said he should never open it. She said her grandmother had insisted the box never be opened and had requested to be buried with it, but this was against their religion. Mannis felt bad and offered to give the box back. The granddaughter said absolutely not. So he took it home and he opened it. He said he was soon dealing with nightmares and experienced several incidents we call the hag syndrome. You know, where you wake up and you have that sleep paralysis and you see some scary thing kneeling atop of you. One evening he came home and found all his light bulbs had shattered. So what did he decide to do? He gave the box to his mother as a Mother's Day gift.
Oh, geez, Louise.
Can you
No.
imagine? I mean, how
There's
dumb
no
and silly.
baggage there, huh?
No baggage there. And soon after, she unfortunately had a stroke that rendered her unable to speak. She was, however, able to spell out by pointing to letters. Hate gift. Yeah, I think I would spell that out too. Eventually, he sold it on eBay to a student who soon experienced similar issues, including his hair falling out. So he sold it to the Missouri Museum director, Jason Haxton. Haxton didn't believe in the paranormal, and he really researched this. He looked inside the box and found 2 pennies and 2 locks of hair, plus Hebrew protection prayers written on small scrolls of paper. He had the box tested by scientists, thinking maybe it was made of or coated with something that was causing hallucinations and the hair falling out. Scientists found nothing other than an ordinary wine box. Haxton eventually wrote a book about his experiences with the wine case, which was turned into a movie in 2012 called Possession. He eventually sold the box to Zach Baggins of the Ghost Adventures TV show, where it is now housed in his Las Vegas museum. And visitors who want to look at that Dibbuk box have to sign a release form, releasing the museum from any responsibilities for what ensues after encountering the wine case. That's pretty
I like that the man tested it.
Yeah, me too.
I wish they had found something.
I know. Me too. I'm glad that it's locked away, though. What is causing all of these hauntings? Well, according to Rosemary Ellen Guiley, she says it's all about the emotional and psychological state of the person involved. If the person is psychologically unstable, dealing with addiction, or has undergone a recent trauma, this can all create the ideal energy for a haunting. Trauma creates vulnerabilities, making certain people ideal candidates for attachments. This suggests a cause and effect relationship where a person's internal state acts as a portal, making them susceptible to a parasitic attachment from a pre-haunted object. She believes a haunting is not a simple one-way transference of negative energy from object to person. It's more symbiotic two-way amplification where the person's inner turmoil can attract and feed the entity attached to the object, creating a compounding paranormal nightmare. And I really believe what she has said there. I really do. When I used to work with haunted cases, there was this one house, and I remembered the one family who lived there had encountered some spooky stuff. But the next homeowner, he was a minister, And his wife, they were just the sweetest, happiest couple. You know those people like, come to church with us on Sunday and pray, like just very happy, baking bread, and nothing happened. The next couple that moved into that house, they were on the verge of divorce. She had just lost a very close family member from a tragic passing and was really, really in the depths of despair and was really wondering where her family member was. Is there something more out there? And I think that was a recipe for whatever was haunting this home to just kind of wake up again.
Right.
They eventually did divorce and moved, and that home was sold to another family who were moving to my state to just kind of recover after one of the spouses had gotten through an addiction. And they had encounters in that house, and unfortunately, that person went back to the addiction. And then the house was sold again to someone who had just tragically lost her husband, and they saw some stuff in that house. So there's like a history of trauma associated with that. And it's always made me wonder what attracted what to that house. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
What do you think about that?
I do think there are certain places that seem to, and it's the bad luck syndrome. Why does all this shit happen to the people in this situation or in this place? Or I think that if buildings and places hold the energy of the people that have been there, and it's repeated trauma and grief and loss and addiction and pain being more leveled more and more and more, that's going to leave a mark.
It is. I had another woman that we went to see a couple of times, and she did have some weird negative stuff going on in her home, but it wasn't consistent, and it was varied, and it was chaotic energy, to be honest with you. And her job was buying foreclosed homes, and she was ruthless about it and not a very nice person. And it's always made me wonder, was that really a haunting, or was it negative thought projections from the people whose home she just would kind of walk into and say, I own this now?
Right.
You know,
And
again,
what
going
led
back
up to. Yeah.
Yeah, the power of the mind.
Right.
Okay, so what can you do if you think you have a haunted doll or an object?
You get rid of that shit is what you
wait,
do.
you don't want to just get rid of it. And before we get to that, we want to talk about some classifications. Hauntings are categorized into two types, residual and intelligent. So a residual haunting is believed to be a non-interactive energy imprint. It's sometimes called the stone tape theory, that replays a past event without any awareness of its surroundings. So like if someone always came home and slammed the door and ran up the stairs, and you buy the home and you hear that's not really that person haunting the house. It's called an imprint. In contrast, an intelligent haunting involves a sentient spirit that can interact with the living, as is claimed in some of the stories like Annabelle and Robert the doll, who allegedly exhibit interactive and malevolent behaviors. So the first thing you want to do is assess the situation. You want to trust your intuition. If you think the haunting is coming from a specific object, remove it for about a week or so and see if the symptoms subside. You can also smudge the object with cleansing herbs like sage, rosemary, or Palo Santo to remove negative energies. And use salt. Salt purification involves placing the object in a container of sea salt for several days to absorb residual energy. You can also use holy water and prayers. You can add a few tablespoons of sea salt to a spray bottle of water, and you can bless the water or use holy water and wipe down the object. It's also a good idea to place clear quartz crystals around the object. And of course, don't forget about the power of sunlight. Place the object in sunlight for at least 6 hours, and you can pray over it while visualizing it surrounded and filled with light. Now, for some of these negative things we've been talking about, ritualistic burial can be an effective method for laying the object to rest, particularly for items with strong emotional ties. You can also throw it into running water. It is not recommended that you give the object away or donate it. You don't want to pass that negative energy on to someone else.
No,
No.
that seems incredibly mean.
I know. But haunted objects on eBay, remember when that was such a big thing years ago?
Yeah, but then why? Why would
Why?
someone want that?
I know. I don't know. I think people are just so fascinated about proving that there is something out there beyond our visible conscious awareness.
Which goes back to the power of our mind.
Right. Exactly.
And I mean, this is very interesting because it is that tightrope between, am I so convinced that this is a phenomenon, that this is a possibility, that I believe it, but also when unexplained things happen or you're alone in your home at night and you feel your skin crawl because there's something there that you can't, there's a strong duality to this.
Yeah, there really is. And it's, it's something to be aware of and to think about, but I don't think we should be afraid of it because like Rosemary Ellen Guiley was saying, this stuff it's like attracts like. So as long as you keep your vibes clear, cleansed, aligned, and positive and filled with positive things, I think we'll all be okay.
Right. And it's interesting to me, you can always, and I would think that the same rule applies. So many, many times we've said, if you're very sensitive and you don't want to tell them to go away and they have to leave, there's universal principle in law. So it seems like that same thing. If you put that doll or box or whatever and you remove it from your space and you feel better, use the same techniques you would use to remove the energy, uninvited energies, because that's definitely uninvited.
Definitely.
Oof.
I know. It's scary. It makes you think.
Well, I, from a personal perspective, I'm glad we're through our 2 spooky shows of the year.
No more spooky stuff for you, Denise.
Not right now. This is enough for now.
This is enough. All right. So, note to self: do not get Denise a creepy clown doll for her birthday.
No. Thank you. I have enough stuff. No dolls are necessary. Thank you, though.
Peace, light, and love.
Right.
Thanks so much, everyone, for listening. Remember, as always, to show up, do great work, and share your light.
Take care.